What's up? What's up, everybody?
What's up, everybody?
It's Saturday night. As such, it is time for another episode of Have a Conversation After Dark. No, there's nothing in there. There's nothing in there. There's nothing in there.
I just finished eating pizza.
All right, listen, folks. Listen, if you're here, we need you to share this. Please share this with your network. We want to have you as a part of this conversation. It's interesting. It's funny, right? So when the countdown, I might shorten the countdown. As much as I love listening to that track, I may shorten the countdown because it's funny because people jump on. I see the number go up.
It's too long
during the countdown, and then it goes back. It goes back down. So I may shorten it. I love the track. I'm biased.
Yeah,
So
I love it.
I could listen to it for 3 minutes.
I love it too, but
anyway.
I think it's a bit long.
Anyway, if you're here, let us know you're here. If you're here watching live, let us know you're here. Shout yourself out in the comments. Please share this with somebody so we can get some more people in the conversation. Because here's the thing. These Saturday night conversations, they don't, well, how can I say this? I was going to say they don't work without the people. I won't say they won't work without the people, but they're much more enhanced by the people.
Yeah.
Right? So we need you in here. We need you in here, folks. Get in here, get in here, get in here, get in here, and share it with some folks. All right. So if you saw the title, the title of this is not a spicy topic tonight.
It almost was.
It almost was. I think next week's topic might
made you change.
Might be spicy. Tonight's topic is not that spicy. However, it is something that I don't hear a lot of conversations about. Right. So here's the thing. that the goal of this, for anybody who might be new to this, the goal of this is that we want you to be intentional about having conversation. So we want you to be intentional about having conversation about everything.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing, and this is our ideology. So I'm not saying that this is the Bible, but we don't believe that anything is off limits in terms of conversation between you and your spouse.
Right.
You should be able to talk about everything. And what I don't hear a lot of people, I hear people make little remarks here and there and say, hey, you should, we all know leave and cleave, but we don't often talk about the issues that arise when that doesn't happen. And that doesn't happen way more often than not. And according to what we experience with the couples that we are able to serve,
Mm-hmm.
that is a significant issue. And what is the issue that I'm talking about? The issue is in-law. So if you saw the title is Mother versus Wife. And I saw a question posed on social media that for me is a no-brainer. But this question on social media literally garnered about 11,000 comments. 11,000
Wow. What's
comments.
the question?
The question was, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember it exactly, but the question was essentially, what do you say about a man who chooses his mother over his wife?
Mm-mm.
That was a question. What do you say about a man who chooses his mother over his wife?
Wow.
So hence the title tonight, Mother versus Wife. And what we want to hear from you guys is how do you handle in-law drama?
Yeah.
In-law drama is a significant component as it relates to conflict in marriage.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of conflict is sparked over either the in-laws don't like your spouse, or you don't like the in-laws, or one spouse is choosing the in-laws. So wife runs to dad instead of the husband, and husband runs to mom instead of the wife, and it creates all this kind of conflict, right? So the question I have is, how do you handle in-law drama? How do you handle in-law drama? How do you handle a spouse that chooses their parent over you? That's the question.
Yeah.
So if you're here, shout yourself out. We want to know in the comments. Now, you don't have to tell us all your business, and you can speculate. If this is not your issue, then just speculate.
Give your opinion
on
how it should be.
How do you handle in-law drama? Let's say you can't stand your in-laws. Now, we've all heard this phrase that says you don't marry the person, you marry their family, right? You marry their family. Speaking of family, here is family. What's up, family?
Who's here? Oh, it's
what's
my
happening?
Sister.
What's
now,
happening,
see,
family?
This in-law, we get along with. Well, of course, I get along with her. She's my sister.
And yes, I am also glad I don't have that issue.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you might be saying that for a different reason. I'm saying it because I don't have that issue. Like the family that I know, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say they don't have a problem with me, and I don't have a problem with them.
Correct.
So this is for us, this is not coming out of our own
right
personal experience.
It's not coming out of our playbook.
This is coming out of our experience with a lot of the couples that we actually get to serve, and that's a big issue.
Yeah.
So here's what I'm gonna say, right? And I got some confirmation from my sister-in-law in the comments. Nope, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. I am beloved.
Beloved. You've been watching too much.
I've been
You've been
wa-
watching too much.
watching these English shows.
What's it called again? Charlotte.
Charlotte, yeah,
Beloved.
the one to whom I have been betrothed to.
Betrothed.
Her family beloveth me.
Uh,
All right, so
aw, she said nothing but love for you, Ollie.
I appreciate that. Nothing but love for you as well. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
Happy birthday to my nieces. It's the twins' birthday today.
Oh man, happy birthday.
8 years old.
Wow, that went
I
by
know.
fast.
Sure did.
That went by fast. 8 years old. Before you know it, they're gonna be graduating from high school. In 2 seconds flat. So here's the thing. So the question that I saw was, what do you say to a man who chooses his mother over his wife? Now, can a relationship, the question I have is, can a relationship last under those circumstances?
It possibly could last, my opinion,
Mhm.
but how healthy is it lasting? Like, what's the health of it? You know,
Well, and here's my thing.
I think it could last, but I'm sure because of the choice that he made, that it's not like, I'm sure his wife doesn't always feel okay with the fact that he's choosing his mother over her. So the relationship, the marriage itself may last in and of itself, but like, how healthy is it lasting?
and that's the thing. If it's not going to be healthy, then like, what's the point?
Right.
Really is, I'm not, obviously I'm not just like a starch proponent of divorce just for the sake of divorce, but
Starch is not the right.
whatever the word is, I'm not that. Starch is hard, so that's what I was thinking. I'm not a hard, fast proponent of divorce. Hence
It's
why I chose
staunch.
staunch. Starch and staunch probably mean the same thing if you look it up. I'm not either one of those a proponent of divorce just for the sake of divorce. However, what's the point of living in an unhealthy relationship?
Mm.
And if your in-laws are creating an environment that fosters bad health in your relationship,
Wow.
then
Wow. Fosters bad health.
then
I mean, it happens. We see it.
yeah, it might be time to make a decision. Now, that's not me. I'm not telling you, if you're in a situation now where you got in-law drama, I'm not telling you to leave, but I'm just saying you got
How
some decisions
healthy
to
is
make.
it? How healthy is it?
You got some decisions to make. Now, I got this question though. How do you tell your parent that, because here's what we don't talk about.
Mhm.
How do you tell your parent to stay out of your marriage without ruining the parent-child relationship?
I think that it can be done in love.
Okay.
And if the parent or parents really have your best interest in mind, and if they really are, okay with, well, obviously they're not okay with the person being married, because they wouldn't want to have so much. Sometimes I think it's not that they're not okay with it.
Mhm.
It's just that I think that it's difficult for them to transition. But your question again was, how do you say,
Yeah.
you
How do you say it without ruining the parent-child relationship? Because here's what happens, right? And we've seen this a lot of times. Once that drama is confronted, it becomes an ultimatum.
Yeah.
And hence why I titled it Mother versus Wife, because for a lot of people it becomes an ultimatum. It's like, I gotta choose now.
Yeah, I agree. I would like also to say that it's not necessarily always the mother or just the mother.
Yeah, you're right.
Sometimes it's the siblings.
Sometimes it's the siblings. Sometimes it's
Sometimes
dad.
it's the
Sometimes it's
father.
grandparents. Yeah.
So
right.
in-laws, period,
In-laws,
across the board. But I think that I or you, if we had to go back to our parents or our siblings,
Mhm.
it can be done in love.
It can be done in love.
So how would you do it is your
Yeah,
question.
how? Because we've seen it. We've seen it become ultimatums. We've seen it where there's issues in the home. We've seen it where it creates resentment between the husband and wife because now you saying, "Oh, I can't." So now I can't go to mom's house or I can't go to dad's house, and you upset because I called him, and then da 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 da.
I
Right?
mean, if it comes to here's how I would start it.
Mm-hmm.
I would start it with a conversation with my siblings or mother.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, I love the relationship that you and I have. I love, it's been all of my life. It's been this, and
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I love our relationship. However, I have made this choice now as an adult to be married to this person. And now it's time for my relationship to not transition as in change, but there's going to be a different facet or a different dynamic
Mm-hmm.
now to the relationship where I'm now incorporating another person. And
Mm-hmm.
that person has precedence as far as the choices that I make.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be an agreement between now me and my husband. I love you. It's not disrespectful, it's actually biblical.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how it's going to be. And I would leave it at that for now.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, set out, you know, boundaries, I guess. This is how it's going to be. The choices that I make is going to be an agreed upon choice between me and my husband. If we want your opinion, we'll ask for it. We'll come to you and ask for it. You can even offer it unsolicited.
Mm-hmm.
However, if I don't accept it or if I don't use or incorporate your opinion into our relationship, um, it's no disrespect, but it's just a choice that I've made.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Think about your answer when I'm gonna go to this comment. But what if, as nice and as diplomatic as you were just now, your siblings or parents are like, well, forget it. I don't want nothing to do with you. If you're not going, if that's how it's going to be, and you're going to leave me for him, and you're going to cut him off, and I raised you, and I
Right.
put all this effort into
It
you, and now you talking about
happens.
you ain't just going to go on with what he say and
It
da da da.
happens.
So tell me how you handle that. But think about that for a second. So the signs are usually there at the beginning. Yes,
Absolutely.
they are there at the beginning before marriage. I believe that many of us ignore them
Yep.
because many of us aren't. So before marriage, and this again, I'm just talking from me. I, you tell me what you think. Before marriage, we aren't often thinking long term in that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So before marriage, I'm just enamored with you. We having fun hanging out. There ain't really no real interaction with your family, and if there is, it's all fun and games interaction.
Well, not all the time. I think sometimes it does get to the point that it gets to even after marriage.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that a lot of times we think, oh, it'll blow over
Mm.
type thing. They'll come around.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's what happens. Sometimes it is that it is true that it doesn't get that deep
Mm-hmm.
before marriage, but oftentimes I think it does. And we just feel like I'll handle it for now, and after we're married, it'll blow over.
Listen, we want your opinion. Those of you who are watching now, and even if you happen to be catching this on the replay, we want your opinion. We're talking about mother versus wife. Now, I put mother versus wife, but we're talking about basically spouse versus family.
Mhm.
And quite often, we see scenarios where family is put first before spouse. Now, let me say what I tell couples. This is what I tell couples. There is a marriage hierarchy. And if you want your marriage to be successful, this is the hierarchy you have to subscribe to. It is God first, your spouse next, your children after that, and then you line up anybody else you want to line up
After that.
after that.
Mhm.
Often what we see is It is family first, kids,
Mm.
then spouse. It's the complete opposite. It's
And
the
that's a
complete
tough one.
reverse.
And maybe that should be a whole nother conversation
Maybe
because that's a tough one when your children are little.
it is a
Like, how
tough
do
one.
you balance that?
Now, here's what I'm not saying, and this is the reason why sometimes people buck against it, because I've heard several people be like, "Well, I'm not putting my child, I'm not putting my spouse up ahead of my child." Here's what I'm not saying: hierarchy does not denote neglect in any
Yes.
segment of the hierarchy.
Correct.
That's not what we're saying. So if
Correct.
you put something first, it doesn't mean that the person who's second is going to be neglected. It
Right.
means that the person who's second takes second priority to the thing that's first.
Mm. Mm.
You're going to still, if you have a list of priorities, if you have a to-do list for the day, and you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you list those 5 things in order of priority,
Mm-hmm.
it does not mean that number 5 is less important. It means that number 5 is not gonna you're not gonna get to it until number 4 is done. That's not less importance.
I agree for the most part, but
Okay.
I think that things come up, like emergencies come up where,
Yeah.
that 5 has to be bumped up.
There's contingencies.
There's
I agree with that.
contingencies.
I
Yeah,
agree with
there's
that. But
contingencies.
often that's not how we're operating.
Oh yeah, correct.
Often we're operating in the vein that here are my priorities, and as such, the stuff that's lower on the list, the numbers that are lower on the list get lower attention.
Yeah.
And that's
Right.
not what
And that's not necessarily the
that's
case.
not what that means.
Yeah.
Because if I have 5 things to do today, I'm going to hit number 1 because number 1 needs to be handled first.
But they're all important.
Right. But when I get to number 2, I'm still going to be hitting it at 100%,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not going to do that before number 1.
Mm-hmm.
So, as it relates to the marriage hierarchy, what we're seeing is that people are putting their parents first, they're putting their family first, their siblings, they're putting their kids, in the mix there, and then their
Mm-hmm.
spouse comes afterward.
As far as in-laws go, I
Mhm.
can understand. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying I understand it. As far as, well, my mom said da 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 da, so I'm gonna just do that.
Mhm.
I mean, I understand it because you've had this relationship with your parents or your siblings all of your life. Whereas the relationship with your spouse has only been at least years. So I understand the challenge that it sometimes is to make that transition. I get it. I'm not saying it's right. And obviously we didn't do it, but I get how it can be difficult to make that transition.
It can be difficult.
Mm-hmm.
It can be difficult. However, you're going to have to make a decision.
But you do
Now,
have to make the
I'm not saying that
decision.
decision has to be an ultimatum. Like, you got to be like, I'm cutting off folks
Mhm.
for the sake of other folks. You may have to.
You may have
It
to.
may come to that, but I'm not saying that. Now, there are some other people some other people watching. There's not a whole lot of people watching right now, but there are some other people watching. And I would love to put you on the spot. Now, there's probably some folk that are watching that their spouse is next to them, and they're like, "Man, I can't really comment because I hate them jokers. I can't really say that on camera."
Aw.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's cool.
No,
I'm cool
not
with that.
hate, not hate.
I'm cool with that. Here's the thing. I just speculate. Talk about somebody else that you heard about, right? Because I really want to know from the folk that are watching, how do you navigate that? How do you navigate in-law or family drama?
Yeah. And I think, like you were saying, as far as, you know, what were you saying? Like, how you gonna put him first and all that
Right,
kind of
right.
stuff. Sometimes it does come to the point where you have to put up that boundary and be like, if that's how you feel, I really wish you didn't feel that way, but I'm sorry. My
Okay.
spouse comes first. So if you don't want me to come over anymore, or if you don't want to come over, or we're not invited to family functions because of the choice
Mm-hmm.
that I've made, I'm sorry. Sometimes it comes to
Sometimes it
that.
comes to that, and that's a hard decision for. I'm not
Unfortunately.
saying that's an easy decision for anybody, right?
Mhm.
And I know that I probably at times come across as a very callous individual. That's not a hard decision for me. I'm just gonna be clear about that.
That would be hard for me.
Now,
Thank God we don't have that issue.
that's not a hard decision for me, and it's not because I don't love my family. It's just not. It's not difficult for me to have that conversation.
Mhm.
I don't want it to unravel my relationship with my family. Now,
Yeah.
hear me. I'm not that callous where I'm like I don't care.
Mhm.
I do care, but
Yeah.
at the same time, what I'm not going to let happen is I'm not going to let anything disrupt this.
Yeah,
I'm
I
just not going to
I
do that.
take that back. It wouldn't be hard for me, but it would be painful for
Right?
me. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just not going to do that.
Yeah.
Now, here's the flip side. The flip side is I have heard people say, "Well, he or she, they just gonna have to deal with that." Because
He who?
I'm not about to have that conversation with my family. I'm not about to put them at arm's length.
You mean my spouse is just gonna have to
Right.
deal with it?
Right. I've
Mm.
heard people have said that to me.
Yeah.
Like they just gonna have to he or she just gonna have to deal with that.
Mm.
Because I'm not doing that to my family. I there's too much history. These are the people who raised me. These are people who have my back.
Yeah.
And even if whenever he or she ain't acting right, these are the people that's always gonna be there. So they just gonna have to deal with it. How do you deal with that spouse? Because now essentially what your spouse is telling you is that you're always gonna come second.
Mm.
Or you're gonna come first until you don't.
Wow. That's very sad. Hi, Anthony.
What's up, Anthony?
Anthony Murray is here.
So how do you deal with that? Because that is literally what people have told me.
Yeah.
Now I'm putting it in my own words, but literally people are like, "Hey, listen, you could be first, but when you not,
Mm.
and you just gonna have to deal with that."
I mean, how do you handle that? Because if you were to say that to me, I'm trying to think of how what I would
That's
do.
what I want you to think about. How does that play out? Now, we're again for those of you who are kind of jumping in and out, we're not coming out of our playbook with this because this is not something we experience. My parents love Denise, like love her, and I love my in-laws.
Mhm.
I love Denise's family, and they love me, thankfully.
Mhm.
But we're talking about what we've seen with some of the couples that we
Man, I don't know
get
how
to
I would
serve.
handle that.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
I don't know how I would handle that if you were like, "Well, Nisi, you just gonna have to suck it up," basically, because it is what it is with my family, and this is how it's gonna be. Mm.
What are we talking about, Anthony Murray? We're talking about in-law drama. So the title of this is Mother versus Wife, and we're talking about instances where family is chosen over the spouse
Mhm.
and the drama that causes, and how do you navigate that? How do you navigate somebody who is going to run to? How do you navigate a situation where the spouse runs to their family, runs to their parents, doesn't include you, or steps over you
Mm.
with whatever advice they get from their family,
Yeah.
and tells you that, hey, that's how it's going to be
Yeah.
because these are my people. They've been my people since day one. You just been here for X amount of years, right? And that's something we have seen. Now, I'm going to tell you what I tell couples. Now, I'm not callous, but I am very straightforward. Folk who know me and have been in coaching sessions with me know that I say exactly what I mean. And I told a couple one day, I was like, listen, if you don't change that ideology, you will get what you are getting right now.
Mm.
So we're wasting time.
Mm.
Because it don't make no sense for me to pour into you and give you this information and tell you what you should be doing if that's your ideology.
Yeah.
What you're getting right now is what you will always get, which
Yeah.
means we can wrap this up. So you're gonna have the decision you're gonna have to make now is, are you okay with getting what you always get?
Mm.
And if
Here,
you're not, then you're going to have to change the hierarchy.
I have a scenario.
Mhm.
How would you handle this? I know for us, again, this is
Mhm.
not an issue because
Mhm.
I think I saw a video. It's been a while now. And sometimes it comes back around where the wife was upset
Mhm.
because the mother got in the front seat of the car, in the
Wow.
passenger seat of the
Mhm.
car. The husband's driving,
Mhm.
and the husband's mother, sits in the passenger seat,
Mhm.
and the wife sits in the back.
Mhm.
And if I remember the video correctly, the wife was like, "What's happening here? Are you okay with this? This is your mother. Why am I not sitting in the front?"
Mhm.
And the mother was sitting up front like, "I ain't moving. I'm not sitting in the back of the car."
That's
I know for us that's not an issue because
that's
my
not.
mother
Yeah.
will not sit in the front seat
Yeah. She
unless
not.
she
She not gonna want
absolutely
to.
has to anyway.
Right. Right. Right.
She'd
So
rather sit in the back seat.
so listen. At that point, the husband has to step in and
But
say
what's
and say
right?
something. What's right?
No, I'm just, well, I guess if the wife feels some kind of way about it, then she the husband's going to have to be like, "Mom." Now here's the thing.
That's a good point you just said. That's a key phrase you just said. If the wife feels some kind of way about it.
Yeah, because the wife may be like, "Absolutely, mom, you should be sitting up front."
Right. And she might be cool with that because from for a respect level, she may be like,
Mhm.
hey, sit up front. I
Yeah.
love that you said that, right? Because that's the thing that I think we have to get to. Like this show is typically not about advice, but there's probably going to be a lot of advice that comes out of this in the next few minutes. But part of it, part of, and I'm going to answer the question because a lot of people haven't answered the question, which is how do you deal with this drama? Is that part of it is that you have to come to an agreement about what is actually a battle to be fought and what is
Exactly.
actually not, right? So if
Because for
you're
some
okay,
couples,
right,
it's not an issue.
right, right, it might be the access may be easier for her to sit in the front,
And that's what I was going to say too. If it's a health issue,
right,
then she probably should sit in the front.
right. There may be more room. It may be
Just
easier
easier
to
to
get in
get
and
in and
out,
out.
right? All
Yes.
that kind of stuff, right?
Correct.
So Anthony said, leave and cleave to
That's
your
right.
new family.
That's right.
Yes. Now, in a perfect world, that's what should happen,
Yeah.
right? That often does not happen. We leave, but we don't cleave.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just saying that from our experience with couples.
Yeah.
Many couples leave, they do not cleave.
Cleave. Oh, that's good.
They don't. And that's where the problems come in.
Yeah.
They leave, but they do not cleave.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter how many years. Yeah, I agree. I
Doesn't
agree.
matter.
Marlene said, oh, no, that's for the front seat thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing. So if the wife has an issue, and here's hold on, this is where it's going to get dicey.
Mm.
I think it depends on it does
Their
depend on the relationship. I agree with that.
Yes, agreed.
Now here's where it's going to get dicey. We live in a day and age now where it's very difficult for men to understand their place,
Whose place?
a man's place.
Okay.
So in that scenario that you just described,
Mm-hmm.
there are some schools of thought that if I as a coach say, listen, you need to actually, if your wife has a problem with it,
Mm-hmm.
you need to work on meeting the needs of your wife.
Mm-hmm.
There are some schools of thought that is going to call the man who does that a simp.
Mm.
Because you just gonna fold because your wife has a problem with your mother being in the front seat, so
Wow.
you just gonna fold and you just gonna do whatever she say, right?
Wow.
So you have that school of thought. So the man's thinking, okay, nah, I can't really do that because I'm not trying to look like like a joker in this
Yeah.
situation. So I'm not gonna check my wife. And then the wife is feeling some kind of way because her needs aren't being met,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which then puts the guy in a different bad light, a different light, but both lights are bad.
Mercy.
So it's a lose-lose situation for him, right? Because the mom is looking at him like, you my son, what you gonna do?
Right.
You're not about to put this woman in front of me. And the wife is like, I'm your wife, what you gonna do? And he's like, I don't want to be a simp and I don't want to be, overbearing.
That's tough.
So I'm just gonna let it play out however it's gonna play out.
You know what I find funny too? as Christians, now I know this isn't everybody's story, but as Christians, we follow what we want to follow as far as what's biblical.
Yeah.
Because leave and cleave is biblical.
Yeah.
And, a mother will tell you all this stuff that's biblical, but when it comes to that, often
Mhm.
they're like, well, I'm the mom. I've been there
Right.
for him since day one. How you gonna, now throw me in the back?
And it's even worse when your family actually has a controlling stake in your life.
Oh, yeah.
So when they have been used to making decisions for you, and they
Mhm.
have been they've been used to being at the table when major things happen,
Yeah.
and those kind of decisions have to be made, that makes it even worse, because then they're like, hey, I have been a stakeholder.
It's always been me.
Right. I'm a key stakeholder
Yeah. What would you
in this
do without
person's life.
me?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I will not back down. You call me whatever you want to call me. Simp, whatever. There is a hierarchy.
Mhm.
And if you want your relationship to thrive, you will have to follow this hierarchy. And it is God, your wife or your spouse, your children, and you line up everybody after that in whatever order you want to line them up after those three things: God, your spouse, your children. I promise you, if you do not do it that way, you're going to run into some issues down the road.
We're talking a lot. We have talked a lot in this segment about husbands and their relationships to their mothers.
Oh, yes, it's the other
But
way around too.
it's the other way around too,
It's the other
because
way around.
there a lot of wives are daddy's girls. And as far as daddy is concerned, no one was ever good enough for their
Right.
little girl anyway. So that's
Yep.
his influence is there because she's always been a daddy's girl.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a big issue as well.
It
like
is.
my daddy this and my daddy that, and you're not doing it like my daddy, so I'm you can't be doing it right.
And then they
Whatever
run
it
and then
is.
they run to dad, which now emasculates the husband,
Yes.
puts him in second place.
Mm.
Now he's feeling some kind of way, and that is a recipe for disaster.
Yes, it is.
Recipe for disaster. Anthony
Yeah.
Murray said the mother knows
What's in the Bible, but only takes out what she wants to use. Everybody does. Yep.
And listen,
Everybody does.
and Marlene said total agreement with the hierarchy.
Yeah.
Does culture play a role? Excellent question.
Ooh.
Excellent question.
That's good. I think culture definitely plays a role.
Without a doubt. Because I'm going to tell you right now, in the West Indian culture, there are issues.
Mm-hmm.
In the African culture, there are issues.
Yes.
In the Asian culture,
yes,
there are issues.
Yeah.
Right? It does. It really, really, really does play a role.
I think in every culture there are issues, but the issues, maybe the intensity of them,
yes, I agree,
is different.
Yeah, I agree.
Because of the culture.
There are some cultures actually where that is actually a welcome thing.
Right. Yes, true.
Now here's what's happening, right? Here's what's happening. In many cultures where it is a welcome thing, it's been a welcome exchange for years.
Mm-hmm.
But you got these millennials in every one of these cultures.
Yeah.
Are heavily influenced by Western ideology.
Yes.
So even I was talking to, and it's crazy you said that, I was talking to a relationship coach in India. Mm-hmm. And she was saying that all of the customs that India for, the arranged marriages, the family involvement, and all that kind of stuff. She was like, man, these 20-something-year-olds in India, they're like, nah. About that. They're like, nah, we good.
Yeah.
We're not about to do that.
Yeah.
You ain't about to be in my life like that. Like I was literally talking to a woman about that not too long ago. Yeah. And that's the thing. Even some of the cultures, the younger folk in some of those cultures are now beginning to see the need for some level of independence from that that family involvement, right?
Mhm.
So I don't know. My thing is, I'm all about the hierarchy. How do you handle it? I mean, that's a tough one, especially if your spouse is on board.
Yeah.
Leave and cleave. I mean, listen, obviously, leave and cleave was admonished for a reason.
Right.
And we see what happens when it doesn't have what it creates when it doesn't
But
happen.
what do you say to those people though who aren't Christian? Like leave and cleave is a Christian biblical
Hmm.
I don't want to say concept, but commandment.
Hmm.
So what about those people who aren't Christians? Yes, it still applies to them, or it should you would think that it would
It
still
it does
apply
still
to
apply.
them.
I think the wording just changes. The
The
wording
wording
changes. So
changes.
when you if you're talking to somebody who is not in church and doesn't
Just
it
not a
doesn't
Christian.
subscribe to biblical beliefs, what you're now attempting to ingrain in them is that now you have now taken on the responsibility of creating your own family.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So now you have gone from a member of
Mm,
you. So let's put it in, because you mentioned Charlotte. Let's put it in those terms, like the kingship type of terms, right?
mhm,
You have now gone from being a member of the royal family to being the king.
mhm.
Don't nobody tell the king what to do.
You
The
know,
king has advisors,
yeah,
but at the end of the day, the king is gonna be
makes
like,
the
"Thank you for
decision.
thank you for telling me. I'm gonna let you know what I'm gonna do."
It reminds me of the other British show we were watching.
Hmm.
It's not British actually. Um, The Empress.
The empress, hmm,
That dude's mother was heavily involved
heavily
in his
involved. Yep,
life
yep,
and decision making.
yep. And you
Yeah.
saw the issues that it was causing,
Yep.
right? The wife was feeling some kind of way. Her and the wife was at odds.
Right.
Right now, the king is feeling some kind of way because he in the middle. I got to figure out what I got to do. And yeah, that ain't no way to live.
No.
Your boy right
Yeah.
here, I'm not living like that. I'm not living like that. I say this with the most respect. This woman right here is enough. I'm not taking on any other projects.
What any
Now,
other projects?
I'm just not.
Meaning
I'm
that
not
I
adding.
am a project.
I don't mean it. I told you it's in the utmost respect. I am not adding to.
I'm a project,
I'm not.
guys.
I refuse to add to the responsibility that I already have. And I'm not saying that it's overwhelming. I'm just saying I'm not adding to it.
Mm,
What I signed up to do when I got married was to provide, protect, priest, learn how to be those things for this person. And so she became number one. And I'll be honest, I had a conversation with my mom about, and I wasn't mean, but I was just like, hey, at the end of the day, we gonna pull the trigger. You can provide the ammo. You can say, here's the ammo you should use. Here's the gun you should use. Here's the gun we used, and this is how we got it, and we hit the bullseye every time. Thank you.
right.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, the decision is mine to make.
Yeah,
Yeah. Or ours to
yeah,
make.
yeah, yeah. Um, Anthony said the
Hmm.
black culture is divorcing a lot. Yeah,
A lot.
actually, Anthony, every culture in
At this
this
point.
stage, every culture is experiencing divorce. Even cultures who generally had longevity, because again, going back to what I was saying, the younger generation in all of these cultures is now, everybody around the globe to a certain degree
Hmm.
is beginning to subscribe to these new ideologies that are coming around about relationships and relationship structure, and the fact that we can place back doors and all of these different things.
Yeah.
So there, a lot of cultures are seeing now, in the black culture, in the American culture, the uptick is probably higher. I need to do the research and get the numbers. It's probably higher than some of these other cultures, but the younger generation in a lot of these cultures, man, they're getting
Oh,
exposed to
wow.
the West, and
Because of the music.
yeah, because of the music. Interesting. Interesting.
Huh.
I can see that.
Yeah, I could see that
I can see
too.
that.
I could see that too.
I can see that. That's a universal language. Yeah, that's a universal language, and
Yeah.
there are some detrimental. There are some concepts that are introduced that are detrimental. I would agree with that.
Yeah, for sure.
I would agree with that. Marlene said, right, the definition of marriage has changed. It has.
Various reasons.
It has. There's so many people that feel like marriage is antiquated.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many people that feel like the marital structure as it was initially designed, like I'm not going to get into that, but
It's not
it's
not the same
not valid,
anymore.
right?
Right.
It's no longer valid. I've heard people even go as far as to say that that original structure, if you want to call it that, is actually what's the word I heard somebody use recently? Man, I can't think of the word, but essentially that it's actually uh, it's discriminatory in the way that it is presented, right?
Yeah. I mean, think
So
of the day and age that we're living in.
yeah,
I'm not surprised that someone said that to you.
yeah. So it's big business now. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
So listen, here's the thing. Here's the goal of this, because we're going to get out of here in a few minutes. The goal of us even bringing this up is that, again, like we say every week, it's about you having conversation with the people that are important to you, your spouse, your family.
Yeah.
If this is an issue, and again, we don't normally give advice, but I'm going to. If this is an issue, if you are dealing with family drama, the thing that you have to realize is that when you got married, you signed up to start a new company.
Mm.
So let's look at it in business terms. Before you got married, you were part of a family.
Yeah.
Let's call that family structure Business A.
Mm-hmm.
In Business A, you were not an executive. You were an individual contributor.
Mm-hmm.
And you had other executives that were helping you, that were guiding you, that were raising you, that were giving you all of this stuff. When you got married, you chose to leave that company,
right,
and start your own.
Yeah.
Now, are there companies where the CEOs get together and have lunch and bounce ideas? Hey, listen, man, I'm thinking about moving the workforce this way. What do you think? Absolutely. But guess who has to make the decision after that lunch conversation?
Right.
Not the dudes that gave him the advice.
Yeah.
He does.
Yeah.
Because he chose to leave company A and start company B.
Mm-hmm.
That's essentially what you're doing when you get married. So if you have company A always in your ear, and you're making decisions about company B, you're letting company A make decisions about company B, you in a problem. That's a problem. That's a problem. And so what do? You now have to stand up and create some bylaws for company B. And you have to understand that company B has the same hierarchy structure that company A had. Because when you were an individual contributor, you had a father, a mother, a sister, a brother, and there was a hierarchy, right? Mm-hmm. Head of the home, supporting head of the home, sibling, oldest, middle, younger, whatever it is, you need to establish that same structure in your new family.
Yeah.
So if mom is calling the shots or dad is calling the shots, then you ain't in a new company. Or you're running your new company into the ground because you're not standing up to make decisions for the company you chose to create.
Yeah. Bankrupt.
Yep.
That's what'll happen.
That's what'll happen.
Bankrupt.
That's what'll happen. Because I'm going to tell you right now, I know the company that I worked for, I know that the president of that company definitely has relationships with other big companies. This is a $1 billion company, multi-billion-dollar company that I was working for. He has relationships with a ton of people, but none of those folk was making decisions for his company.
Yep.
When it was time to stand up and things happen, who was standing at the front when we had the all hands? The president.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. It's not that the input from your in-laws or this other company,
Mhm.
it's not even that it's bad. It's not even that it's bad, but
Right.
is it what you and your spouse have decided
Mhm.
to incorporate into your relationship? Because it may be phenomenal advice, it may have worked for their relationships. It
Mhm.
might even work for yours, but you have to make the decision as to whether or not
Mhm.
you're going to incorporate it into your relationship.
Yeah.
It's not even that the advice or suggestions or the counsel that they're giving you is wrong. It could be right and perfect.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it has to be your decision to make, you and your spouse's decision to make.
And it has to be you and your spouse's decision because of the hierarchy, right? So to go
Correct.
back to the beginning, for those of you who might have missed this in the beginning, I saw a post that essentially said, what do you tell a man who decides to choose his mother over his wife?"
Spouse.
Now, in my mind, as soon as I read that, I was like, why is this even an issue?
Right.
Like, is this really a debate?
It
Like,
is for
are we
some. It
debating
is
who
for
do we
some,
choose,
though.
mother or wife? But here's the thing: there were 11,000 comments. So I was like, you know what? Let me
Wow.
go down the rabbit hole for about 15 minutes, and I start scrolling comments, and there are people actually saying that I'm not allowing nobody to trump my mom,
Wow.
and I'm what?
Yeah. Yep.
That's why you had the drama you have,
Unfortunately.
because you're not following the hierarchy, right?
Mhm.
So if I'm not, and I'm not here to beat nobody up or nothing like that, but I'm just telling you that if you're facing family drama, you need to reevaluate the hierarchy. And here's the thing, please, I need to stress this: the hierarchy does not mean that one person necessarily gets neglected for the
Correct.
sake of the other.
Yeah.
What it means is that you give priority to one thing, and then the other thing falls in line under that priority. And if you're married, your spouse is priority. You can take all the advice you want, you can take all the instruction you want.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, you cannot choose your family over your spouse.
Mm.
Period. Great topic. Love you, fam. I'm
Love
out.
you
All right.
too.
Love you
Good
too. Good
night.
night.
Love
Good
you
night,
too.
family. Good night. Hey, look at my friend Ruth is here. Thank you, Ruth. Creating boundaries is vital. Creating
Vital.
boundaries is vital. And Ruth, what we've realized in the time that we've been coaching couples is that those boundaries very seldom exist,
Mm.
or they don't realize that there was a need for boundaries until it's on fire.
Mm.
So now we're in situations where mom is calling the shots. Uh, the daughter or son is doing everything to try to please and appease and make comfortable this parent or sibling or anything like that,
Yeah.
and it is ruining the relationship with their spouse.
Yeah.
The spouse is feeling neglected. There's some level of resentment. There's some level of animosity. What am I even here for if you ain't gonna listen to me, or you just gonna run over whatever I say, or you not going, or you're not even gonna come to me
Mm.
as a teammate and
You know?
ask me something or
Yeah.
provide something to me. You're not even gonna come to me as a teammate. You just gonna run to dad, or you just gonna run to
Right.
mom. You ain't even gonna come ask me nothing.
And then come back to me and be like, well, this is what me and mom said should happen, or this is what me and dad said should happen. So this is what we gonna do.
Yeah,
Mm.
we not about to do that. Mace, what's good,
But
fam?
that
Thank you for
happens
being here,
though.
bro. That does happen. That does happen. Real quick, what if the marriage becomes toxic and your family has the best interest at heart? That's a great question, Mace.
That does happen too.
That's a great question. Now, and that speaks to something I said earlier, Mace, which is that what we're not advocating for is that what we hope doesn't have to happen is that you have to cut people off, because your family actually, it hopefully, if the family structure was good and it was healthy, your family provides a very significant uh set of values and instruction that could be vital to your situation, right?
Correct.
So if your situation is crumbling and you were doing what you had to do from from jump, then yes, your family is going to be there, especially if you've set those boundaries and you've created and maintained that relationship. Then your family is definitely going to be there to step in when things go bad. So
Yeah.
I agree with that. That's a great question, bro. That's a great question.
Yeah, because that does happen.
That's
Your
a great question.
relationship with your spouse sometimes does become toxic
Right.
or volatile, and then
You got to lean on the
you've
folk
got
who,
to have
right,
those people
right.
who you can lean on and be like, "Oh, this is not this is not what you should be dealing with right now. This is not where you should be." Absolutely.
Right.
Your family needs to step in, or whoever, your close loved ones, friends, or
Mhm.
whatever. They need to step in at that point.
Which is why it should not be an ultimatum.
Say that again.
Which is why it shouldn't be an ultimatum.
Mm.
We've seen couples where they're like, you got to choose one over the. No, you don't have to choose one over the other. You have to prioritize one over the other.
Correct.
That's something very different.
Yeah.
Those are two very different things. That's like me saying you got to choose iPhone over Android.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what I'm asking you to do. Have both phones. What is your main phone?
Yeah.
If your main phone is iPhone, it doesn't mean that the Android's never going to get used. It means that the iPhone is your main phone.
Well, the iPhone will get used probably a little bit more.
Well, I mean, I like tinkering, so I like Android. I'm an Apple guy 100%, but I like tinkering, so I would use the Android all the time. But that's the thing, and often what couples feel like we're asking them to do, especially when we have these conversations with couples and family drama is an issue, often there's one person who kind of bucks against what we're saying because they feel like what we're asking them to do is stand up one and put down the other. No, we're
Right.
not asking you to do that. We're
Correct.
asking you to prioritize who is going to be first and who is going to be second.
Yeah.
Again, going back to what I was saying for you, Mace, what I was saying earlier is that if I have 5 things on a to-do list and I prioritize them, I'm gonna do this one first, I'm gonna do this one second, I'm gonna do this
Mhm.
one third, and so forth and so on. It doesn't mean that number 4 is not important. It means that number 1 is gonna get done first.
Right. Yeah.
When
They're
I get
all
to
gonna get
right,
done.
when I get to number 4, I'm gonna give it the same 100%.
Yeah.
But that's gonna be the fourth thing. That's not gonna be the first thing. And I
Yeah.
think couples feel like we're saying, hey, if I choose my wife, that means I hate my mom. That's not what we're saying. Like
Yeah.
that, look, you don't have to do that. However, what we're not gonna do is have individuals that are lower on the priority list creating policy for a scenario that you should be creating policy for.
Correct. Yep. Absolutely.
So that's what's up with that. So
Absolutely.
May said tough thing is you never
You never
know
know
the
the
person for real.
until you
Yeah.
get married.
Yeah,
True.
that's true. I mean, you do sometimes you see some signs. I mean, we see some signs in the beginning, like Marlene was saying earlier. You see some signs sometimes,
But you ignore them.
sometimes we ignore the signs, and then sometimes it's stuff you don't see.
There are stuff you
Because
don't see.
right, because sometimes we're putting our best foot forward during the dating phase. You showing up as the representative. That's a word that a lot of people use.
Yeah.
You showing up as your representative. And then when you get comfortable, then we start seeing some things that we shouldn't have seen before.
Yeah.
Anthony Murray said Android all the way. I hear you, bro. I'm an Apple guy, 100%, but I'm not an Apple guy at the expense of Android, because I have
Mhm.
had Android devices, and what I love about Android is that you can tinker. You can tinker with Apple too, but it's tougher to tinker with Apple than it is to tinker with Android. May says, so what about the people that choose their therapists? That's we might have to tackle that one in a whole nother Saturday night, because that's a whole nother
Choose their
dynamic.
therapist.
That's a whole
You
nother
mean choose
dynamic.
the suggestions or advice of the therapist?
Yeah. Well, that's what I was thinking. Here,
Well, I think that a therapist shouldn't be giving advice, but should be helping you unpack
right.
so that you come to the right decision for yourself.
Well, I'll say this: a therapist can give advice, right?
Well, yeah, but
But
I
but
mean, go ahead.
but at the end of the day, right? What the therapist is really introducing is concepts that could be conducive to success. You still have to try them
Yeah.
and see if they
Yes.
work.
Yes. Correct. Yes. Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
if they don't, then you go back to the therapist and say, "Hey, I tried this. This is not really
Right.
working.
Right.
Maybe there's something else we need." And then the therapist can maybe do some more unpacking
Right.
and get to the,
Mm-hmm.
to the root cause. So for the person who goes to the therapist and is like, "Hey, here's what's happening in my life." This is a great example. So I was watching this. I wanted some background noise on, so I started watching this show on Apple TV called Shrinking,
Mm-hmm.
and it's about this therapist. I only watched like one or two episodes, but I remember in the first episode he was talking to this lady, and the lady was talking about how all this type of stuff that was happening. And he was just had his head in his hand, like, I can't believe we're doing this. And finally, he blows.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, "Listen, he doesn't love you. He doesn't love you. He doesn't respect you. Leave him. Just leave."
Wow.
Like, you can't do that.
No.
You can't do that. Like, there has to be another way to go about
Mm-hmm.
that. So there shouldn't be, to speak to Mace's question. The therapist can't make decisions for you
Shouldn't.
or shouldn't make decisions for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So he said yes. Uh, so 40 married parents can't give advice and can't. So 40 married parents can't
can't give
give
advice
advice
and
and counsel.
counsel.
Everybody can give advice and counsel, bro.
Right.
Like, that's what we said earlier. Like, so I use myself as an example. I had a conversation with my mom, right? And I had a conversation with my mom. My parents are a significant part of my life, especially now in this day and age, because they're in their 80s, right? But I had early on, when we first got together, I had a conversation with my mom, and I was like, "Listen, how we're gonna play this, essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but how we're gonna play this is that um I'm never going to there's never going to be any disrespect. I'm going to always receive everything you have to say."
Correct. Implementing it is the decision that I need to
Right.
make, though.
Right. So yeah, I'm gonna always receive whatever you have to say.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, however,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make a final decision.
Right.
Like, I'm not gonna allow you all to make that decision.
Right.
I'm gonna make that final decision, and I welcome all the counsel and
Mhm.
all the advice,
Yeah.
because in the multitude of what does it say? In the multitude of counselors is, what does Proverbs say? Something about there's
Wisdom.
wisdom in the multitude of counselors,
Yeah.
right? So I'm going to take all the advice.
Yeah.
The only difference now is that when I was under their roof, they made decisions for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's no longer going to happen.
Right.
That's the only difference. And I think that's where a lot of people get tripped up, because a lot of people feel like, in order for you to choose your spouse, it means you choosing something means throwing away something else. And
Mhm.
that's not what it means.
Mm.
And that's what we see with a lot of couples. They don't want to make a choice as it relates to the marital hierarchy, because they feel like making a choice is the same thing as throwing something away.
Correct. And it's not the
And
same.
it's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
Why Did I Get Married? The movie. Yeah, I gotta remember that. I can't remember that movie.
I remember it vaguely.
With the odd couple was giving advice
The
on the
old
beach.
couple.
Old couple was giving advice
On the
on the
beach
beach.
was a good one to listen to.
Okay, I might have to go back and look at that scene. But yeah, that's the things, and that's and for me, I feel, I don't know, it makes sense to me,
Mm-hmm.
but clearly, we've seen enough couples where that's an issue,
Yeah.
right? And family drama doesn't have to be an issue.
Doesn't.
because it doesn't have to be an ultimatum. It doesn't mean that I have to stop listening to you in order to make her the priority.
Mm.
It doesn't mean that. And I don't know. I don't understand why that's so difficult for a lot of people.
Again,
I
I,
just,
I I think that, like I had said in the beginning, I think it's just difficult for mothers, fathers, even siblings, in-laws, to make that transition from this is how it's always been
Mhm.
to, oh, here comes someone else now, and
That's a
that person
yeah.
has the precedence.
That's a whole nother side. Like you kind of flipped it on its other side because sometimes it's not the spouse. Sometimes it is actually the family member who is like, "Hey, you a newcomer."
Yep.
So so because you a newcomer,
Right.
you're
It's
gonna have to
difficult.
you're gonna have to acquiesce to what we already got going
Yeah,
on.
we already got a system
Right.
here.
Right.
You're a newcomer.
That's a
We already
whole
got a system here. This is
yeah.
how we do things.
That's a whole nother issue, man.
Hmm.
Like, cause it's one thing for the spouse to be like, "Hey, I'm gonna run back," but it's another
Yeah.
thing for the family, the in-laws, to be like, "Hey, bro, sis,
This how we do it.
welcome to the family, but just be clear, like you ain't running nothing here. Like
Yeah.
we good, we
Mm.
already good. Like come, you know, that's a whole nother situation, man.
But that's where the spouse, though, has to
Appreciate you,
stand
Mace.
up. That's where the
Mm,
spouse, thanks, Dre. That's where the spouse, though, has to stand up and say,
mhm.
you know, this is how we have been doing things.
Right.
However, I'm choosing to go a different route now.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's true, Anthony. Some they think you forget about them. Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes. And listen, I get it, bro. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
You raised a child. Listen, I'm gonna put my wife on the spot. We have one son. He's 20 years old. She gonna have a problem.
I'm not gonna have a problem.
Hey, you heard it here.
I'm not.
In several years, come back and watch this video and be like, you was right, bro.
I'm not gonna have
Yeah.
a problem.
Now, I'm not saying that
As
she's gonna
long
be.
as she does everything I tell her
Yeah,
to.
see what I'm talking about. See what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. So and so I understand that, right? Because
It's
it,
just been this way.
it's been this way. You especially if you were striving to be a great parent.
Right.
You've poured a lot into it.
Yeah.
You're seeing the culmination of your efforts,
Yeah.
right? It's sometimes hard to hand that over to somebody, that
Right.
responsibility over to somebody, because you're not losing a person. We feel like we are, but we're really not. All we're doing is handing the bulk of the responsibility that we shouldered over to somebody else.
We want to micromanage their
Right,
relationship.
right. We want to, right, right. So listen, don't think for a second that we don't understand.
Yeah.
Don't think for a second we don't understand. However, that being said, it is important to understand and work within the work within the boundaries of the structural hierarchy.
Yeah.
And as you work within the boundaries of the structural hierarchy,
Mhm.
know that it does not mean that you are throwing anyone away.
Right.
You are delegating responsibility based on priority.
I think what needs to happen is reassurance. The
That's good.
spouse needs to give reassurance to the mother or the siblings or the father that I love you. I really value your opinion, your input, your counsel. And I don't want to say but, because that negates everything that I just said. And I'm also going to have input now from my spouse. And that input may be the direction that I go in. Doesn't make your input any less valuable, but doesn't make your input any less valuable. But I'm going to go this route.
Mm,
Your input is still as valuable, but I had a decision to make
mm.
and I'm choosing my spouse.
And that's okay.
And that's okay.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
So listen, again, we're going to get out of here. Here's the thing. The whole point of this conversation that we're having is not necessarily to give advice. I know we gave some advice tonight. Those of you who have never seen this Saturday night show before, this is your first time. Typically, the topics are very spicy, and that's
Mhm.
why it's called Have a Conversation After Dark.
Dark.
We're typically talking about topics around sex and those kinds of things. But tonight, I just felt like we needed to talk about that because that's an issue we see with the couples that we that we come across. And so you did get a little bit of advice tonight, but here's the goal of these Have a Conversation After Dark episodes is for you to have these conversations with your significant other, with your spouse,
Yeah.
because these things have to be talked about. Because here's what happens. Here's what we've seen. In 100% of the couples who this is an issue for,
Mhm.
they have not talked about it.
They haven't talked about it.
They haven't talked about it. They're talking about it now because it has created this terrible issue between them. But they never had a conversation around, hey, here's how we're going to handle this.
If this
Here's
happens, this
right.
is what we're going to
Here's how we're going to navigate this with my family. Here's how we're going to navigate this with your family. Here's how we're going to make sure that everybody feels comfortable and everybody is loved and everybody's respected and everybody respects us.
Because I feel like if you were to have these conversations up front before any issues, it would make when the issues arise,
it would make a difference.
So much easier.
It would make a difference. And I'm telling you, 100% of the couples that we've seen where this was a hot button issue, they never had that conversation in the beginning. They never had the conversation about, hey, listen, your family's been very instrumental in your life. Yeah. And that's cool, man. I love it. Let's talk about how we can make sure that they still feel comfortable. Right. And they still feel respected and loved and valued. And let's talk about how we make sure they do that for us as well. Yep. They didn't have that conversation. Yep. And now the world is on fire. And now they're trying to scramble to figure out. And by the time the world's on fire, somebody's already feeling some kind of way. There's already some level of resentment. There's already some level of, well, she don't even respect me because all she do is always run the dad. We already there. Yeah. At that point. Right. So heading that off at the beginning could be a way to mitigate some of those issues. So right. Listen, we're going to get out of here. Again, listen, if you know any couples that want to communicate on an extraordinary level, who want to recognize, manage, and recover from conflict in record time, and want to build a holistic, intimate bond, we have another cohort of the Make Love Better, a 6-week group coaching experience. It's not just about sex. It's a play on words. Make your entire love better. We've had phenomenal success and fun with the other cohorts. Couples have come and gotten a wealth of knowledge, not just from us giving things to them, but from the other couples that are in the group as well. Correct. Everybody iron sharpening iron. Yeah. The masterminds have been phenomenal. So if you know any couples who want to be a part of that, or if you yourself want to be a part of that, you can go to www.denali.org/make-love-better. www.denali.org/make-love-better. I was looking for it, but I didn't see it on there. So we'll put it up here. org/make-love-better. I think I spelled it right. So if you know anybody who wants to do that, listen, we are welcome. We welcome you. The new cohort starts on July 16. We only have a few slots because we keep it very small. Yeah. Because we want you to experience the iron sharpening iron experience. So if there's 20, 30 couples in this, we're not going to get that. We want to make sure everyone gets attention. We're not going to get that. There will be 8 couples total in this cohort. So we only got a few slots left for you to do that. All right. So listen, we're going to get out of here. Make sure you have a conversation. If this is new, if this is your first time, I don't know, Mace, if you've seen this before, but some of the others who've been here, go back and check some of the other episodes, man. It's some crazy conversations. But the goal is for you to, in turn, have the conversation with your spouse. So with that being said, have a fantastic rest of your Saturday night. Have a phenomenal rest of your weekend. And we will see you next week.
Have a great week, everyone.
All right.
Good night.
Take care.